Hello and welcome to another edition of David's Mystery Church Tour. Let's see if you can figure out where we are. Anybody have a guess? Let me pull back a little bit more and maybe you'll start figuring it out. Where could we be? Oh, you probably all have a guess now. Let me swing us around. And now you probably undoubtedly have an idea where we are. That's right. We're over here in the church. And today, straighten my hair, today we're going to talk about some of the symbols here in the meeting house. And we'll talk a little bit about the meeting house. So today we are in the 1843 meeting house of the Roxbury Congregational Church. This is the fourth meeting house. The first two meeting houses were located in what was known as the Old Roxbury, at the junction of Old Roxbury Road and Lower County Road. So if you go past the transfer station south, and you come to a corner where junctions in with Old Roxbury Road, you'll see a cemetery in front of you. And the first two meeting houses were located in the corner of that cemetery, the southeast corner of that cemetery. And just south of that was the first Episcopal building. First Episcopal church was there. And there's still a stone altar there, although it's very much overgrown with brush, that marks that location. And there's a historical plaque about the Congregational Church just outside of the cemetery, right on Old Roxbury Road. Eventually, that was the old center of town. And from there, that is where they were afforded winter privileges, as it's known. Because this area originally was the town in the Ecclesiastical Society of Woodbury, the First Congregational Church and Ecclesiastical Society of Woodbury. And people from all the different areas of that parish, if you will, had to go to the church down in Woodbury. It was not a long distance today, but in those days, particularly in the wintertime, it would have been very much an arduous journey down over the hill and into the valley. So in wintertime, they were granted privileges to be able to worship back here in Roxbury with winter privileges. And they had the first two meeting houses were there. And in 1733, the area of Roxbury was granted and set up as a distinct ecclesiastical society by the General Assembly. Remember now, in those days, the General Assembly and the church were very much intertwined together. The ministers, even though there was all this separation idea in England, the church was still very much interwoven. People in those days had to pay taxes, and the taxes went to support the church. And it wasn't until the Connecticut Constitution of 1810 that the Congregational Church was written out of the Constitution of the state of Connecticut. Anyways, I digress. First two churches were up there. The third church was right down the street from us. As the center of living and commerce moved closer and closer toward Mine Hill, and the railroad that ran down through there, that meeting house was down there, and then finally the fourth one was built here in 1838 with our chapel, which we talked about last week, 1843. You may remember from our bell tour, the first week, you saw all the heavy wooden beams that were dragged and hoisted, and still to this day support this structure. Over years, the building has undergone some changes, some renovations, some improvements, but there are still many things here that you would think show its age. So if you look down here, you might see how the aisle goes up and down like this, and makes you feel like you're stumbling as if you are a little intoxicated, if you will, and you can trip as you go down the aisle to a certain degree. Most of the furniture here is original from the 1800s, but I am told that there are some pieces here that came from the Methodist Church, the former Methodist Church, no longer in existence, that was located over on South Street, right next to the old town hall, was a Methodist church, and some of those items came here. I don't know exactly which ones, but I can take wild guesses. But you'll see that we have our pulpit and the chairs up near this area here, which is called the chancel. This area here is called the chancel. Everything on this upper level is known as the chancel when you go up these stairs here. If we work our way around, actually you'll see the cross up there. Cross was handmade by Carl Rieker many years ago, probably 40, at least 50 years ago probably, and was originally this, I should talk about congregational architecture. Congregational architecture typically is very plain. The idea was that you did not focus on statues or other things or stained glass windows, things like that, so that you had your focus on worshiping God. And you also had where you had your windows here were clear so that you could see outside to the mission field. Because what was happening in those days was that you were here and that you would be sent out into the world to spread the gospel. Now, many churches have stained glass windows. My home church in Wallingford has all stained glass windows. It's not taken away from that, but it's just that was a practice that happened over time. This church is unique in a sense that it does not have a center aisle. It only has two side aisles, one on each side, much to the sadness, I guess you would say, for some brides who dream of coming down a center aisle. Although people who grew up in this church very much don't have a problem with that. Also, in old congregational tradition, you used to have pew rents. I was talking with somebody about this the other day. The pew rents were for being a part of the congregation, you paid for your place to sit. It was your place. And it cost more to sit at the back of the church, less to the front. And I've seen churches where they have the diagrams that list out the names of everybody where they paid for their pew rents. One leftover for that here is you can see on the pews, you can see the numbers. So you would pay the pew rent for number 24 or number 23. The lighting is, we believe, is original, but obviously has been changed to electric lighting. We're not sure if it was oil. My guess is it was probably oil lamps in those days. We have a wonderful, wonderful Steinway piano. It was donated by the family of Dr. David Lincecum, who passed away back in 2011, I believe it was. And that has helped us out a lot here at the church. If we move to the back, I want to show you this cabinet here. This cabinet you would think is all silver, but actually it's not. This is all pewter. Actually, there are a couple plated silver pieces. This is communionware. So you have your what's called a chalice, and this is known as a platen. And then you have your pitcher. This set here was given in memory of Hiram Curtis, who died on March 22nd, 1874. didn't know Hiram, but somebody must have really liked him. So they gave this set for everybody to use. If you do the classic way of celebrating communion, what you would do is you would put your wine or your juice in here, and you would pour that into the goblet as part of the service of communion. We don't do that in these days. Much simpler. Also along here, you're going to see a couple other things. One is a flower vase that was given in honor, celebration of our daughter Kyla's baptism, and a flower bud vase in honor and celebration of our son Kirby's baptism. Down below, you'll see a few offering plates. We use these offering plates obviously every Sunday, and we have a set that was in memory of, given a loving memory of Tamara Lowe Hinckley, who grew up in this church and died tragically at a younger age, was our church treasurer at the time. And there's two given in memory of her and two in memory of Donald Dodge, who was one of our trustees who died of cancer back in the early 2000s. These are just, these are what gets used most communion Sundays, these chalices. And this ceramic chalice was given in celebration of the ministry of Reverend Dr. Donald Westerberg, who was a minister here in the 1970s, was a pastor here for 10 years, along with his wife Bonnie and two children who were raised here. That was a ceramic piece that was crafted by Ms. McDonald in Bridgewater. This is a holdover that we don't use anymore, but this was a way of collecting offerings. Maybe in this day of coronavirus, this might be the way to collect offerings. You can hand it out and have people put their offerings in the offering, instead of offering plate, it'd be offering basket, if you will. I want to take you back into here. Now, so this is the meeting house, the sanctuary, the worship space. With up there is the chancel. Everything up on top of the stairs is a chancel. And then the balconies. We have balconies on each side. We can have seat about 300 people fairly comfortably. We've seen it filled to the gills. Unfortunately, for major funerals is when that happens. And then what we do is we have extra seating out the side in there in the hall with speakers, and now we've added video so people can see what's happening. This outer entrance, this entrance foyer, in church lingo is called a narthex. And as we come in here, we see a couple of things. One is the bell rope. This is the way that when we rang the bell a couple weeks ago, this is how you have to ring the bell. And we talked about the bell and its dampers to keep it so the wind won't blow. So when you go to ring this, you have to pull it all the way down and let it go all the way up. If I don't, it just sits there and goes up and down, but it won't ring. Over here, you're going to see a scriptural piece. Looks like almost like the Ten Commandments, but it's not. It's a number of different sayings written in King James English. It's been here for as long as I have, so it's been almost 35 years it's been here, and it's been there since way before that. We haven't touched it. We've left it there. We have our table here, which I believe is Roxbury stone, I believe. That's here as well. Now, one thing I wanted to show you was, and just think about this, is, these are the stairs that go up to the balcony. Really steep. And I've watched some of our more senior choir members, when the choir used to sing upstairs in the balcony, would go up those stairs to get up there, and we've kind of pretty much stopped that. I'll show you what we've done to accommodate the choir. Here in the meeting house, what we've done is we've set aside this choir loft area over here. We've taken some of the pews and repurposed them here for the choir. Unfortunately now with the coronavirus, we're not singing because of transmission, but B, also because this is such a tight area here, we are not having choir here only because we're concerned of the closeness that people are. And so that one of the topics of discussion for us is going to be when we do have choir back, how will they sit? Where will they sit? The church is filled with all kinds of symbols. Let's talk about up here. So up here on the communion table. On the communion table, you have, this normally would have for communion, this would be pulled out and have a cloth on it. Because remember, the communion table symbolizes the Last Supper. So it's a meal. It's a dining table around which we celebrate the Last Supper of Jesus. And so this is the communion table. And then behind that we have candles, 2 candles, which symbolizes the light of Christ. So, and that we are to be the light to the world. So those are lit anytime we are having any kind of worship celebration. And we have flowers, which extols the beauty of the earth. We have these pulpit hangings. Some churches have the hangings, the pulpit cloths on top of the communion table as well. They are liturgical in color. Right now we have green because we are in the time after Pentecost. So between now and the first Sunday of Advent, which will be, I think it's the first Sunday in December this year, when it will turn to purple. And here's your little secret. You ready? Watch this. Ta-da! It's purple on the back. Makes it real simple. Just flip it over. Now we're in purple. The other 2 colors that we use traditionally are red, which is used for Pentecost, or any time that is the Spirit, we celebrate the Holy Spirit. So it might be an ordination or an installation. We use red. The other color is white, and white is used during Christmas tide, the Sundays after Christmas, and on Easter. So that's another piece of symbol. We have symbols here that we have, while not biblical, we have incorporated into our buildings. Flags are things that remind us of our allegiances. The first flag we look at here is the United Church of Christ flag, or sometimes you'll see a Protestant flag in our churches. And the other is the American flag. The American flag is always to the right from the people's perspective, because it's down on the floor. If it was up on the pulpit area, the chancel, it would be on the other side for the minister's right side. That's why it gets set up that way. This beautiful art installation done by Gene Steers is, to me, it speaks volumes to who we are as a congregation. Different colors, shapes, sizes, and all together in one big circle, one community. It speaks so much of who we are and what we are here at the church here in Roxbury. So this place, I need to say a couple things for you to think about. One thing is that some people would say we are on holy ground. And I think holy ground could be anywhere that you are aware of the presence of God. That is holy ground. We are particularly aware of that here in this space because this is a place that we come together to specifically worship God. God does not need our worship. We need to worship. We need to worship to remind us of who we are and whose we are. And that's why we come here. We come here to play the organ, to sing hymns, to listen to scriptures, to have the minister extol about the ways in which that scripture might enlighten us and also challenge us out in the world as we go out through these clear windows to see the world all around us. So you are always welcome. By the way, I should say, the front church door does not lock. We cannot lock this church. It's something that is a kind of a fluky thing. We don't know where any keys are for this particular part of the building. The back part does lock, but this building is always open for you to be able to come in, to sit, to meditate, to lift up a prayer to God, to ask God for help, to listen to where God is asking you to go next. Sometimes you'll even find me in here as I seek God's guidance in being the minister here in this place. Well, that's our tour for this week. We hope that you had a good time, and we look forward to seeing you next week, next Thursday, on our David's Mystery Church Tour. Peace.